Hello and welcome to the third live webinar in the Business Show series with thanks to our founding partner Dell Technologies. I'm Sarah Freeman, Managing Editor of the Business and Finance Media Group. The theme for today is Digital Transformation, Exploring the Impact Across Irish Industry. Today our panel will discuss their experience of leading companies through a digital transformation and look at the impact it will continue to have on the way we work and the way we live. We've been fielding questions from you for the past 24 hours, and later in the discussion, we'll be putting the more popular queries to our panel. If you're tweeting, please use the hashtag #RebootingIreland to be part of the online conversation. Over to our panel now, where I'm delighted to be joined by Dermot McArdle, Head of Business Markets at Electric Ireland, Sarah Murphy, Head of Marketing at Scurry, and Brodie Sweeney, serial entrepreneur and founder and director of Camille Thai Kitchen. You're all very welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Dermot, I'll go to you first if that's okay.
Sure.
You're Head of Business Markets at Electric Ireland with over 400 employees deployed across the country. What does digital transformation mean for Electric Ireland? And when did it first start and in what form?
Well, very good question there, Sarah. When did it first start? I suppose there was never there wasn't a specific day that you would point to say this is when we started our digital transformation program. I suppose it's something that we've always been working on, and we look at digital transformation maybe in two aspects. One is internally focused, so improving our internal processes, our systems, our procedures. Making use of new technology in terms of supporting more efficient use of the resources that we have internally. And that's a constant for business. Business does that all the time, and we do it ourselves. And then secondly, looking maybe more externally focused in terms of the products and services that we can offer out to our customers. And I suppose if you look at what we've been doing there, that's really since the internet really came of age. So maybe in the last 15, 20 years, that's been a real focus for us as a business, and it's been about getting information and services out to our customer base in a more timely manner, a more cost-effective manner, and giving them access to information that would help them to run their businesses. So we made a very big play of moving to an online environment. So if we went back 20, 30 years, the only interaction people probably had with their utility company was twofold. One, in terms of getting a bill out, and secondly, calling in maybe to pay that bill in a post office or a cash office somewhere for the country. So we've moved very much with the times in relation to that, and we've been very proactive in terms of getting that information out to the customers. So customers now can do everything online, really. They can query their bills, they can download their energy consumption, they can look at energy patterns that they're using, all with the view to providing additional resources, capability and information to our customers to allow them to optimize their energy usage.
That's great. Thanks, Dermot. So something interesting there, making use of existing resources efficiently. Sarah, if I could go to you next, you're Head of Marketing for Scurry, an e-commerce company founded in Wexford in 2010. Scurry is a cloud-based logistics platform that connects and optimizes the e-commerce ordering, shipping and delivery process. But even as an e-commerce company, there were still elements of digital transformation that you needed to undergo. Can you set the scene for us?
Sure. Well, I think at Scurry, we've been really fortunate in that e-commerce has boomed during the pandemic. So one thing that we've done is we've worked to support companies in overcoming the challenges that they faced during lockdown through digital transformation. I think there's definitely a growing realization among business owners that digital first isn't something for businesses to aspire to, but it's definitely a basic necessity now in order to just survive and compete in the market. And at Scurry, we're really lucky that our software actually allows companies to build their e-commerce functionality and reach their customers so that they can actually scale and develop their business further. What we've seen, I suppose, in terms of trends is that there's been a 72% uplift in online sales over the past 6 months alone for our customer base, which is phenomenal. And our sales team have definitely seen a huge uplift in their inquiries over recent months as I think businesses look to repivot their strategies completely. During lockdown, we actually raised an additional 1.5 million investment just to support our growth plans, and we were named in the top 50 global tech startups. So there's been huge change for us, and we've definitely gone from strength to strength.
Thanks, Sarah. That's an incredible statistic, 72% increase in sales. Brodie, if I could go to you next. You founded Camille Thai Kitchen in 2010, and today it's Ireland and the UK's fastest growing Thai food chain with 33 outlets, 5 of them in London. Can you tell us how far along the digital journey you were when the lockdown happened, and did it change your business dramatically?
Well, we were incredibly fortunate, Sarah, in that our business model before the pandemic was about 70% off-premises consumption, and most of our orders come on digital platforms. The main one being our own one, Camille.ie. So we were actually, kind of primed, locked and loaded for the pandemic when it happened. We found during the lockdown, our sales kind of held fairly well. And then as the lockdown lifted at the start of June, we actually got a pretty significant rise in business. So compared to most of the hospitality sector, compared to most businesses that are relying on tourists or transport, we've just been incredibly fortunate that the business model we have has lent itself very well towards this, and in particular the online ordering of food, which didn't exist 10 years ago. It's only in the last 10 years we've had companies like Just Eat and Deliveroo and Uber Eats, the kind of aggregator platforms. But it's been incredibly quick, the transformation. And when we first started the business, we could see the way it was going and see what's happening digitally, and we embraced it, and it stood well to us during the current period.
Thanks, Brodie. So great insight there, and a very positive story, even despite the lockdown. Dermot, in 2011, ESB set up an innovation directorate to drive transformative thinking across the company. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How useful has it been to the business, and is it something that our listeners with smaller businesses could try and emulate?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think if just before I talk about kind of what it is in particular, I suppose there's a reasonable just kind of questions kind of why we did it, and it's probably worth taking a step back and looking at that. And so if you look back, and I don't want to go too far back, but the electricity industry in Ireland has been around for maybe just over 100 years. Before the foundation of the state, there was a lot of small utilities, small grids, small generators. But primarily there was nothing as we recognise it today in terms of a national infrastructure or national capability to deliver electricity to customers. And I think at the foundation of the state, it was a very brave decision. Whatever we say about politicians these days, certainly at the foundation of the state, they invested, a fifth of the annual budget to start the development of an electricity infrastructure in Ireland. They built, part of the thing was building the Ardnacrusha power station and developing a network on the back of that. And, over the next decades, kind of, more generation stations were added, more towns were connected, rural electrification, all that sort of stuff. So the electricity kind of industry has been evolving for quite a long time, certainly over 100 years. But if you look back over that 110 years, there was a single business model kind of, that operated, over that period. The generators generated electricity. The electricity was, was communicated through the transmission and distribution networks, and it was consumed by the end user, by the business, or by the, the local household. And it stayed like that, for, I'd say, about 90 years or so. And then if you look at what's happened in the last 10 years, 15 years, maybe maximum, certainly the last 5 to 10 years, the business model has transformed itself in the electricity industry. So, that first part of the industry development, there were maybe a handful of players. There was, kind of the ESB or the network operators, and, the customers consumed product. They weren't actively involved in the market per se. But what's happened now in the last 10 or 15 years is that technology has enabled, each of the industry players, including the customers, to get involved in how energy is consumed within this country. So, the policy drivers have been significantly changed, where we're moving much more towards a renewable space. And the customers, a lot of our larger customers, have direct control over their energy information. They can see when and how they're using energy in the market. And that's going to work its way through to all participants in the market. So, within a couple of years, following, smart metering rollout, which will happen over the next couple of years, every individual in the country who is a consumer of energy will have information at their fingertips to enable them to manage how they use that energy. So the industry model changed hugely for us, and it was important for us then to get into that and to look at how we do our business differently. So that's why we chose to, set up a very specific innovation directorate within the company to drive innovation, because the market was absolutely going to change and the old models weren't going to persist. So that's why we did it, and it has been, I'd say, transformative in terms of how we approach our businesses. So the products that we offer out onto the market, I'd certainly argue are kind of, quite innovative, quite unique. We offer products out to our business customers, which enables them to take active control over their energy consumption. We offer out, all of our services. I want to mention the previous, I think kind of Brody and Sarah would also have mentioned about kind of how online transactions, are just, they're going off the charts at the moment. So we're seeing that as well. So we had to do it because the industry was changing. And we needed to do it in terms of just delivering new abilities and new products to the market, but also to change the culture and the way we think as a business, and the way Electric Ireland and all of the employees within Electric Ireland would focus on and would change their own thinking to that. So it was about culture, it was about recognizing kind of the industry was changing, and it was about getting ourselves ready to lead and then to react also to market changes.
Thanks, Dermot. So something very constructive for our listeners to think about there. Sarah, Scurry was able to help clients get up to speed on what they needed to do in terms of digital transformation. What advice did you give them that our listeners might adapt?
Sure. Well, I think every business had different challenges, but there's definitely two common threads of advice I would definitely give. So the first one is invest in systems that will support you to grow, adapt, and be flexible. So I think technology is playing and definitely will continue to play a really pivotal role in the survival of many businesses going forward. So spend time researching the best fit for your company and your culture, shop around, and make sure that, I suppose, the technology that you implement now is agile enough to ensure your business is future-proofed. And the second piece of advice is really simple. It's stay connected. So use all the digital channels that you have to just stay connected with your customers. So your website, your social media channels, and if you don't have them at the moment, invest in them. That's how people communicate now. And I think digital channels and technology are going to be the game changer that will set you apart from your competitors in the future. It's a basic now for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So research the best fit and shop around are two very concrete pieces of advice you'd give. Brody, changing tack slightly, what is the future of the food industry? Will it ever go back to fully staffed kitchens? And what are the other options?
Well, it's definitely had a seismic shock like it hasn't had probably in 100 years or more. The only game in town now is off-premises consumption and home delivery. People, I think when we got started in our kind of digital journey, we recognized that the amount of time people were spending at home on screens was affecting their eating habits. So they were preparing less meals from scratch, even in fact less prepared to go out to restaurants and dine out, because that was taking people away. And I'm generalizing, but taking people away from their Facebook or their Netflix or whatever they're consuming online. So when we look to the future, I think every restaurant has to have a delivery option now. Even fine dining ones. There's not only a complete lack of tourists, but there's a nervous Irish public, a lot of whom don't want to mingle in public in a dining room just yet. And so people are being forced down that line. But we're seeing a lot of technological innovations coming through. So obviously in a business like ours, we use a lot of software to manage the logistics of delivery. Our kitchens are incredibly busy compared to conventional kitchens. Sometimes our restaurants don't look that busy, but that's because most of our food is going back out the door. So I often say to people that we're in a logistics business that happens to deliver delicious restaurant quality Thai food, as much as we are in the Thai food business. But we're looking at things like cloud kitchens. In London, we're just about to open our second one of those, and a cloud kitchen is a restaurant that's built really on an industrial estate without any of the kind of front of house trappings that you would have in a conventional restaurant. So there's no signboard outside, there's no front of house staff, there's nobody answering the phone, there's no dining area, there's no waiters or waitresses. It's just a kitchen in a built up residential area. They're very attractive for restaurateurs at the moment because they're much lower capital cost than building a conventional restaurant, but they're also much cheaper to staff. So we have innovations like that, innovations like drones, and I can talk to you a bit more about that, but we're a launch partner for Mana, which is an Irish startup founded by a guy called Bobby Healy, and we are trialing with Mana at the moment drones. I mean, the drones actually work perfectly well. The big issue is getting Irish Aviation Authority buy-in, because they effectively have to have the same safety standards as a commercial jet aircraft. So we're looking at that. And then one of the last bastions of labour-intensive industries that hasn't really been touched our kitchens, restaurant kitchens, where there's almost no automation. So we're working on projects in that area also to semi-automate the cooking process, and that will allow us to redeploy that labor, that surplus labor, into kind of more meaningful, less mundane tasks. So there's a lot of change in our industry.
Certainly is. So delivery options will be a prerequisite to success. Thanks,
Yeah.
Brodie. Dermot, Brodie referred there to the acceleration of innovation. Just to pick up on that, the pandemic forced everyone to accelerate their digital transformation. Are we years ahead of where we would be otherwise? And is it proof that a remote workforce can achieve as much, if not more, in many industries?
I'd say in some aspects, it's definitely pushed us to be further ahead than we would otherwise have planned to be. And what I mean by that is, if we were back to March when the lockdowns were introduced and government guidelines, encouraged businesses or directed businesses to have their employees work remotely. That's not something that certainly we would have done within Electric Ireland, as part of a planned process. And it certainly raised kind of a lot of technical challenges for us, to effectively take 400 people out of the various offices, maintain your level of service to your customers, maintain everything that's normal and required in your normal BAU operations, and have people work from home. And to do it within a short order of days. I think if I recall at the time, it was, we got about 2 days notice to get this stuff up and running. And within that short order, but it worked, and it wasn't just ourselves within Electric Ireland. This was repeated in businesses all over the country to do that. And I think what we proved to ourselves was kind of the technical capabilities to effectively run businesses like ours remotely. So I think kind of, without a doubt, the learnings that we've got from that, when we come out of the other side of COVID, we will be doing things differently. We will be working in a different way. And the processes and the way of working that we've learned over the last 5 months, perhaps over the next number of months as well, will form the bedrock of how we work in a smarter way, post-COVID on the other side of this. So I'd say absolutely, I'd agree. I kind of, insofar as you can have a silver lining in a really dark cloud such as COVID, I think there has been some insights into how we can kind of pursue the digital transformation process even further than we would have.
Thanks, Dermot. And Sarah, on that note, were there issues that you saw on the ground with local businesses, weak links that maybe have been ironed out now?
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think every business faced different challenges over the past few months. For many local businesses who depended on, I suppose, more bricks and mortar trade, obviously their entire revenue was wiped away when lockdown measures were announced. I think a really good stat that I heard before was looking at Primark, with the closure of their stores. 1 month alone of that resulted in a £650 million loss, which is just phenomenal. And I think that speaks volumes about how important online channels are for businesses going forward. If you look at, I suppose, our customer base, one of our international clients who's a contact lens provider who exports globally, they actually had some of their international shipping routes closed in Italy and Spain. So for them, literally overnight, within 24 hours, they had to repivot their strategy, add new services, add new logistic routes, just to be able to stay connected and reach their existing customer base. They were just really lucky, I suppose, that they had the business model that was agile enough to adapt. But I think one of the amazing things that I've definitely seen over the past few months is just how businesses adapt to the challenges that they're facing. They don't just overcome them, but I think they're now looking for opportunities and ways to grow and innovate, which is just fantastic. And there's so many success stories out there that we can look at.
Thanks, Sarah. And Brodie, just to follow on from that, what advice would you give to SMEs and business owners?
Well, I can't believe there's that many businesses in Ireland that don't have an online presence or a website, and it's just the way things are. So it's kind of it's not really okay to opt out. Look, it's having said that, the internet is not the be all and end all of all businesses, and lots of businesses that our personal services are best served personally. But I think people, this is a new world we're living in. Any thoughts that this is going to end soon or be over quickly, I think people aren't being in the real world. You have to go where people are shopping, they're engaging on their screens, whether it's through their social media platforms or actually through online shops of one sort or another. And you just have to get with the program. We are in a new world. I know people who had a brilliant business in February, doing really well, and they don't have a brilliant business in August. Their world has utterly changed. And, you know, people are reluctant to let go of what has worked for them in the past. And we, you know, I think business people by and large are optimists. So we do always want to see better times and things coming. But this new world order is here to stay, I think, certainly in the foreseeable future. And the implications for that for so many businesses and the way people have, you know, they're spending more time at home. The city centres are very difficult for trading, that they're buying goods and services at home they wouldn't have bought before. The suburbs have interestingly come alive again. So the small, you know, the villages of Dublin, I'm thinking of the Silorgans and the Greystones and the Swords, that they're doing much better out of this because more people are at home. So they're shopping in the coffee shops and the hairdressers and going to the bookies and what have you. But I really, I think most people are probably, you know, they're not sticking their heads in the sand and pretending this will go away. But it's a time for innovation. It's time for sitting down with your team for, you know, to really brainstorm new ideas and new ways of doing things. And like lots of, I think, good businesses, you try lots of things, most of them don't work, but maybe a path forward emerges from just trying things and giving it a go. Somebody put it, I think it might be our head of the health, one of the health in the WHO, that Irish guy, Mike Ryan, he talked about this is a time for speed, not perfection. I really love that. You know, give something a try. Don't wait till it's perfect. Just get it out there, expose it to customers, see what happens. You know, most business plans don't survive first contact with the enemy. I think there's a great learning there from just get it out, give it a go. You learn something from the experience rather than waiting for perfection.
Thanks, Brodie. I like that, speed, not perfection. I think that's pretty useful. Dermot, to just change tack completely, will digital transformation help with our climate change goals? Something that we were so focused on maybe last year, not so focused on right now.
I think it will. So if you look again at the various segments, so kind of, you know, the main climate change issues that we have in Ireland were in the energy sector, which is largely addressed through European mechanisms. You know, transport is another one. You know, agriculture is one, which is maybe that's a bit more difficult to crack because, you know, cows will do what cows will do, etc. But if you look at the first two in terms of digital transformation, I mentioned at the start, digital transformation and kind of the ability to provide information to every consumer of electricity or energy in the country to manage their own energy consumption. That helps. You know, if people are informed about what it is they're using, they're likely to make more optimal choices. You know, and the cheapest form of energy you will ever use is, you know, the unit of electricity that you choose not to, you know, because you're using it more efficiently, for example. So I think in that aspect, if people are informed, customers are informed, businesses are informed, you know, absolutely it will. The other aspect of digital transformation, and we're seeing it through the COVID crisis, is, you know, people are working remotely. You know, they're not traveling the way they would have traveled in the past, and, you know, and that's going to drive benefits in terms of, you know, sustainable transport, etc. So I think that there's a number of facets to this, but I think undoubtedly, you know, the digital capacity in the economy will help us through informing and enabling actions that people and customers will be able to take to reduce carbon emissions. So I think yes.
That's great. Thanks for that, Dermot. And Sarah, thinking ahead, what effect will our increased comfort with e-commerce have on the big retail dates like Black Friday and the Christmas season?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be huge change, I think, if we look at consumer sentiment. So, you know, people are, you know, they're nervous about returning to stores. I think we saw a recent statistic from a survey that we did that over 80% of people don't think that the pre-COVID shopping experience will return in the next 12 months. So that's definitely going to shape Christmas and Black Friday as we know it. And Black Friday is obviously probably the biggest sales event of the year. And at Scurry, we're predicting that there's going to be a twofold increase in sales this year, which is just huge for many businesses. So I think what people have to do now is prepare for that peak. Look at, I suppose, do they have the right systems in place to be able to manage it? And also, what would they expect in terms of trends? Because I think the increased levels of sales we expect to see at Black Friday will definitely impact Christmas. You know, the high street is not going to be busy around Christmas this year. Many people will go to online channels. 72% of people at the moment want to continue shopping online. So that's definitely going to be a trend for the foreseeable future as we know it.
Thanks, Sarah. I'd like to go to some of the questions we've received over the past 24 hours, and I have an interesting one in front of me here for you, Dermot. is there a limit to what companies are expected to keep up with from both a capacity and a budgetary point of view?
Well, every business has to work within its own financial resources and the business capabilities that it has. So at that level, you work within your own financial constraints that you can. But there's always opportunities for improvement. I think I mentioned at the start, when we started our digital transformation journey, like we looked both inside the company and we looked at the external focus of the company as well. But looking internally, it was about looking at improving our business processes, not wasting resources and energy, if I can put that in kind of in quotes, but not wasting kind of effort, time and resources on stuff which could be done more efficiently. So I think there's always room for improvement, no matter where you are, and that would apply to all businesses. There's no business that isn't capable of improving its performance. But obviously, there are limits. There are financial limits. There are technical limits. But in terms of, I think it's an ongoing journey. We'll never get there and say, look, we've climbed Mount Everest. We've reached the top. There's always further to go in relation to this.
Great, thanks, Dermot. And Brodie, what are the plans to scale and grow your business?
Well, our business is focused on the UK at the moment. We've a fantastic opportunity, not only coming out of coronavirus, but just generally to expand what we're doing. There was a big shift to home delivery before the coronavirus had happened anyway, and that was a side effect of people just spending so much more time online on screens at home. So we're very focused on the London area, and we can open a Camille roughly every 2 miles. That's a kind of an ideal catchment area for us. So we're very focused on the southeast of England, and more cloud kitchens, because they're definitely a way of expanding with a lower capital cost and increased investment in digitization. Just to give an example, a competitor of ours, Domino's Pizza, and I say to competitors in the sense that they deliver hot food to the home. We of course do much nicer food than they do, but they would invest about 10 million a year just in their app in the UK, just in getting their app right. We're spending a fraction of that at the moment, but to compete effectively against companies like that, we need to up our spend, and your user experience needs to be as good as the best in class in the whole world. So that's what drives us and keeps us awake at night, and we're lucky that we've got a great kind of runway for growth ahead of us.
That's very interesting, Brodie. So the UX experience is key.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think I'd like to finish on a positive note. So maybe if each of you could tell me one positive impact that digital transformation will have on our lives. Maybe if I could start with you, Dermot.
Well, I think undoubtedly work-life balance will improve for people. I think we've seen that within Electric Ireland over the past 4 or 5 months in terms of how people are able to manage their home commitments versus their working commitments. And so I think that's definitely we should see that as a positive. And I think it's also going to drive, as I would have mentioned earlier, different ways of working, smarter ways of working. So I'd throw those two into the mix.
Thanks, Dermot. Same question to you, Sarah.
I think for me, it's definitely about staying connected. So I mentioned earlier at Scurry, our mission is connecting commerce, and that's something I think that resonates now more than ever. I think people know how important it is to stay connected to our family, our friends, our customers, our colleagues. And I think digitization has definitely underpinned that and fueled that over the past few months, and it's definitely going to continue to do that going forward.
Thanks, Sarah. And Brodie?
The drones are coming. So what we're going to see, I think, from next year is start to see the widespread utilization of drones. So drones are one of these things that are a win for everybody involved. So for us as a business, it will lower the cost of us doing a delivery. So that's obviously a win. For a consumer getting a delivery from a company like Camille, imagine there's no traffic lights and no traffic jams. So the speed of delivery will be about half of what it conventionally is in a car. And then instead of sending a 3-ton car to do a delivery, you're going to send a battery-powered drone, which has a really positive effect on the environment. So it's going to take cars off the road. It's going to be quicker for consumers and cheaper for the company. And you'd have to go, what is not to love about that?
Thanks, Brodie. So look out for the drones. We're coming to the end of our webinar. I'd like to thank our panelists, Dermot McArdle, Head of Business Markets at Electric Ireland, Sarah Murphy, Head of Marketing at Scurry, and Brodie Sweeney, founder of Camille Thai Kitchen. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for what was a really interesting discussion. I'd like to take a moment to thank our partners who've joined us on this Rebooting Ireland journey. Dell Technologies, Electric Ireland, KPMG, IBEC, National Broadband Ireland, Equinix, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, Expleo, IE Domain Registry, UPS, Interaction, Globalisation Partners, Business in the Community Ireland, Common Purpose, Adapt Centre, Linked Finance and First Citizen. Join us at our one-day online event, the Business Show Virtual Summit on the 10th of September, when over 50 business leaders, founders and entrepreneurs will be speaking on a range of topics around the theme of rebooting Ireland. With plenty of networking opportunities, tickets are available online now at thebusinessshowireland.com. And to those watching, I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.